For 4 long years, a German shepherd named Duke sat next to a deserted gas station at the edge of a small town. He waited every single day, no matter how hot the summers became or how cold and icy the winters turned. His thick fur caught the blazing sun during scorching afternoons and felt icy wind cutting through it on dark, frosty nights. Year after year, in pounding rain and crackling lightning, people drove past him, wondering why this faithful dog refused to leave. The gas station had peeling paint and worn-out fuel pumps that no longer worked. Sometimes, drivers pulled up just to rest on the gravel parking lot, but they had to move on eventually since the station itself had been abandoned. Folks in the town might have expected a stray to wander off in search of new sights or better scraps, but Duke did not. He stayed put, day after day, night after night. People tried to feed him or coax him away. They set out dog treats, bowls of water, and offered kind words. Some even tried to bring him along in their cars. But each time, Duke resisted, like he had an important appointment he could not miss. Every morning, he sat with his eyes locked on the long strip of highway, ears perked whenever headlights appeared in the distance. In the evenings, as the daylight faded and insects buzzed around flickering streetlights, Duke did not budge. His gaze stayed glued to the same stretch of road, as if he expected someone dear to step out of the shadows and say, "I'm back. I missed you." But day after day, no one came. It became a quiet legend in the little town. Nearly everyone knew about Duke. The local newspaper had done a small piece on him once, but it did not lead to any big changes. Truck drivers passing through occasionally spotted him and would later tell folks in the next town over, "There's this loyal dog just hanging out by an abandoned station. Maybe he's waiting for somebody." And that was the same thought everyone else had. What was he waiting for? Martha Reynolds, the owner of the old diner on the main street, had a kind heart and tried her best to help him. She was in her late 50s, with short gray hair and a friendly face. Every day, she drove by the abandoned gas station before opening her diner. She brought fresh scraps of bacon or sausage, sometimes leftover meatloaf. She would set the paper plate near the pumps, step back, and call gently, "Come here, sweet boy." Duke would wait for her to retreat to a respectful distance, then inch forward to eat. Sometimes he barely touched the food, as if his thoughts were too fixed on that road to feel real hunger. But Martha never gave up on him. She would sigh and say, "He's waiting for someone special, that's for sure." Years passed this way. Seasons came and went, from sizzling summers with sunburned grass to howling winters that piled snow drifts as tall as fence posts. Autumn winds rattled the thinning leaves, and spring rains turned the dirt and gravel into thick mud. Yet, Duke's pattern never changed. Townsfolk wondered if he was a ghost or a living statue. Children riding their bikes slowed down near the station, pointing at Duke, whispering, "He's still there." And grown-ups would murmur with respect, "Loyalty like that is rare. If only we knew who he's waiting for." Noah Patterson was a 32-year-old journalist who had passed through this small town many times. He was lean, with short dark brown hair, and he usually had a keen, curious look in his eyes that told people he asked lots of questions for a living. He had a habit of traveling across the country to cover human interest stories, tales of hope, mystery, or bravery that readers found gripping. One early morning, as he drove along the same quiet highway, something made him slow down when he spotted Duke. Noah had noticed the dog during previous trips, but never thought much of it. Sometimes dogs wander in rural places, but this time, Noah felt like there was more to the story. Why was this big, handsome German shepherd always in the exact same spot? Most strays roam around. They go to different neighborhoods looking for food. This dog was so still and so focused. Noah pulled over. He stayed in his car for a moment, engine idling, his camera on the passenger seat. Duke sat nearby, head tilted, staring at the horizon. Stepping out of his car, Noah moved slowly, so as not to startle the dog. He snapped a few pictures and jotted notes in his phone. Then he decided to look for someone in the town who might know about the dog. He figured the local diner was the best bet. Such places usually served as community hubs. People swapped stories and updated each other on local news while drinking their morning coffee. When Noah walked into the diner, He was greeted by the scent of fresh biscuits, bacon, and brewed coffee. The bright overhead lights revealed a few early birds sitting at the counter, chatting quietly. Martha, with her short gray hair, stood behind the counter, wiping a mug clean. She smiled and asked, "Coffee?" Noah nodded, took a seat, and as soon as Martha poured his cup, he asked, "I saw that German shepherd by the old gas station. Can you tell me about him?" Martha tilted her head and gave a knowing smile. "You mean Duke?" She set down the coffee pot. "He's been there 4 years, never left, no matter what." Noah's eyes widened. 4 years. He sipped his coffee and leaned forward. That's a long time for a dog to stay in one place, especially by a busy highway. Martha sighed and placed the pot back on the warmer. "You're telling me people in town tried everything to help him, giving him shelter, treats, even a ride if they could. But he always goes back to that same patch of ground. It's like he can't leave." Noah was intrigued. In his experience, such devotion hinted at a bigger story, a puzzle waiting to be solved. He had encountered many animal stories in his line of work, but a dog refusing to move for years was a new level of dedication. After finishing his coffee and thanking Martha, Noah headed back to his car. He opened his laptop on the passenger seat and began searching local news archives, old social media posts, and lost dog reports. He typed keywords like German Shepherd missing, highway accident, dog near gas station, and dog waiting. He spent several hours sifting through data. At first, he found many random missing dog listings, but nothing that lined up exactly with Duke. However, after scrolling through numerous pages, Noah came across a 4-year-old report that caught his eye. It mentioned a German Shepherd who went missing after a car crash on Highway 214. The owners were listed as Benjamin and Emily Carter, and they had a son named Lucas, who was 10 at the time of the accident. The dog's name was Duke. Noah felt his pulse quicken. The highway in question was less than a mile from the deserted gas station. This had to be the same dog. He scribbled the details in his notebook. Duke, missing after crash. Carter family. 4 years ago. Suddenly, the pieces of the mystery seemed to slide into place. No longer was Duke just a stray. He was a cherished pet who had become separated from his family. Noah glanced at Duke through the windshield. The German Shepherd was lying down now, ears still alert. Noah wondered, did Duke think his family might show up any minute? Was that why he never left? He grabbed his camera and stepped outside, setting it up on a tripod to capture a bit of video footage. The sun was dipping lower in the sky, casting a soft golden glow. Duke was lit by that gentle light, for shimmering. Noah pressed record and began to speak in a calm voice. "This is Duke, and he has been waiting here for 4 long years. People don't know who he's waiting for, but I found out that Duke's family might have lost him after a serious car accident not far from here. They thought he was gone forever, yet he has stayed in this one spot, hoping they'd come back. Today, we might be able to bring them back together." He recorded a few more moments, zooming in on Duke's face. Then he stopped the camera, uploaded the footage to his social media accounts, and typed out a heartfelt message. "Please share. This is Duke, a loyal dog who never left the crash site where he last saw his family. If you know anyone named Carter who lost a German Shepherd, please reach out." Noah hit post and waited, feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Would people notice? Would the Carter family see it? Sometimes social media could be surprisingly fast at connecting the dots. 4 years ago, Benjamin and Emily Carter had been driving home from a weekend trip with their son Lucas and their beloved dog, Duke. Emily's parents lived a few hours away, so it was supposed to be a simple drive. But the weather changed suddenly, turning the road slippery. It was dark, with harsh rain lashing the windshield. Duke, sitting in the back beside Lucas, felt the tension build in the car. He sensed something was wrong. Then bright headlights swerved into their lane. Emily barely had time to swerve. The crash was terrible. Metal screeched, glass shattered, and the car spun off the road. Everyone was injured. Lucas, pinned in the back seat, was crying out. Duke, dazed, could only pick up flashes of noise and color. By the time first responders arrived, the family was in shock. The parents were whisked away on stretchers. Lucas was carried out, and Duke panicked. One of the rescuers tried to hold him, but in his confusion, Duke bolted. In the darkness and rain, nobody could catch him. When the Carters woke in the hospital, they were devastated to learn their dog had fled. They searched the area for weeks, posted flyers, and even placed a missing dog report. But there was no sign of Duke. Eventually, they assumed the worst, that Duke had not survived. Their hearts broke a little more each day. As time passed, their injuries healed, but they struggled with the emotional scar of losing Duke. Lucas, only 10 at the time, felt the loss deeply. His best friend since puppyhood was gone. It was too painful for him to see pictures of Duke, so the family put them away. The Carters also decided to move, partly because returning to the same old house, without Duke's cheerful presence, felt wrong. They packed up and started over in Denver, Colorado. Life went on, but the emptiness remained. Over 4 years, Lucas grew taller. He made new friends, tried new hobbies, and eventually found small ways to smile again. Still, the memory of Duke never left his mind. Sometimes, he dreamed of a big German shepherd running beside him in the yard. In that dream, Duke looked at him with those loyal eyes, as if to say, "I'm still here, buddy." Lucas always woke up with tears in his eyes. On a regular afternoon, 14-year-old Lucas was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He got a message from a friend who said, "You have to see this." Curious, Lucas tapped on the link. It led to Noah Patterson's video. The moment he saw the dog's face on the screen, Lucas's heart pounded like a drum. The dog looked so much like Duke. The fur pattern, the eyes, even the calm tilt of the head. But it couldn't be Duke. Duke was gone, right? Then he heard Noah's voice in the video. "This is Duke, a faithful German shepherd who has waited by this lonely road for 4 years." Lucas froze. For years ago, that's when his family lost Duke. His fingers shook as he paused the video and ran to find his mother, Emily. She was folding laundry in the bedroom, an ordinary chore on an ordinary day, until Lucas burst in, eyes wide, phone clutched tightly in his hand. "Mom, you have to see this," he said, breathless. "I think they found Duke." He pressed play, and Emily's jaw dropped the moment she saw the dog in the clip. Her eyes began to water. It had been so long since she'd even allowed herself to hope. But here it was, staring back at her. The dog in the video had the same posture and the same expression. It was Duke. She was sure of it. She called Benjamin into the room, and together, the family watched the video, tears rolling down their cheeks. The words he never left, hoping his family would come back, felt like a blow to their hearts. All this time, they had been grieving, not knowing that Duke was still alive and waiting. They immediately messaged Noah, asking if it was truly the same dog, and if they could come. Within minutes, Noah replied, confirming Duke was right there, at that old station, still loyal to the last place he had seen them. Emily's hand shook as she responded, "We're on our way." The Carters lived in Denver now, which was more than 10 hours from that small town. But they didn't care. They packed a few essentials, filled the gas tank, and set off at once, well before sunset. Benjamin drove while Emily navigated. Lucas sat in the back, scanning social media on his phone, reading every comment on Noah's post. People from everywhere were touched by Duke's story. Some were crying, some were offering donations, and many were praying the dog's family would show up. Lucas swallowed hard, thinking that they were indeed on their way to reclaim their precious dog. Would Duke remember him? What if the dog had changed after so many lonely years? He had so many questions swirling in his mind, but one thing stayed strong, his determination to see Duke again. The trip felt endless. Traffic lights seemed to linger. Every highway mile seemed slow. Occasionally, they stopped for a quick bathroom break or a brief snack, but they tried not to waste a single moment. Outside, stars started appearing in the night sky, and the moon cast a pale glow over the roads. The hush in the car was thick with worry and anticipation. Emily would sometimes look over her shoulder at Lucas, noticing his restless tapping on his phone, or the way he fiddled with the zipper on his jacket. She wanted to say something comforting, but she wasn't sure how to put her feelings into words. Inside, her emotions were a tornado of excitement, guilt, love, and nerves. They had left Duke behind, Even though it wasn't their fault, it felt like they had abandoned him. Benjamin gripped the steering wheel more tightly. He was normally the rock of the family, quiet, sturdy, dependable. But even he had to fight back tears every so often when the memory of Duke's puppy days flashed through his mind. He recalled the day they first brought Duke home. Lucas was about 6, shrieking with joy as the wiggly puppy bounced around the living room. Duke had grown into a gentle protector, always by Lucas's side. Then came the crash that upended their world. Benjamin never forgot the sound of screeching metal or Lucas's cries for help. Duke's disappearance added an extra layer of sorrow to an already awful night. And now, after all this time, they were rushing to see if a miracle was real. Meanwhile, Noah Patterson stayed near the old gas station, determined not to let Duke out of his sight. He'd posted an update, saying the Carters were on the way. The news spread quickly. A few local folks dropped by, bringing portable heaters, blankets, and snacks for Noah and maybe some dog treats for Duke. Everyone was brimming with hope, but also anxious. Would the reunion go smoothly? Duke lay under the flickering light of a single street lamp. Noah could see the dog's ears flick whenever a car drove by, as if anticipating the exact moment the Carter family would arrive. Noah spoke softly to him sometimes, saying things like, "They're coming for you, buddy. Just hold on." Duke didn't seem to understand the words, but he understood the gentleness. He didn't run from Noah. He merely watched the roads, saving his real attention for that special vehicle carrying the people he still loved. The night dragged on. Noah felt the chill bite at his fingers, even though he wore gloves. He walked around the gas station's perimeter, capturing some footage for later. He thought of how he would write this story up for the news, a dog's loyalty proven through the harshest tests. This was the kind of moment that reminded people of hope. Every so often, a single car or a large truck roared by. Duke would stand and peer into the darkness, tail stiff and eyes bright. When the vehicle continued on, Duke would lower his tail and return to his spot. It was heartbreaking and inspiring, all at once. For years, this dog had a patience that humans rarely managed. Noah felt a tear slip down his cheek as he murmured, "Your wait is almost over, boy." In the dim light before dawn, headlights appeared on the horizon, sweeping across the lonely highway. Noah stood up straighter, heart drumming in his chest. He checked his phone. The Carters had texted that they were close. This had to be them. Duke rose too, body tense, ears forward. Something about this car seemed different to him, like he sensed the connection before even seeing who was inside. The vehicle pulled into the gas station lot, crunching gravel under its tires. It came to a stop, and 3 figures climbed out. Emily exited first, tears already streaming down her face. Benjamin was next, eyes searching urgently. Last, Lucas emerged, looking older than in any old pictures, but with the same familiar warmth in his gaze. Duke took one uncertain step forward. He sniffed the air. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Noah stood quietly, not wanting to break the spell. Emily, unable to hold back, called, "Duke!" Her voice cracked with raw hope. Lucas spoke more quietly, but his words made Duke's ears perk higher. "It's me, buddy," Lucas said. His voice wobbled. "We came back." Without another second of hesitation, Duke sprinted across the short distance. Emily let out a sob, and Benjamin knelt down. Lucas opened his arms wide. The dog practically leaped into them, nearly toppling Lucas over. Everyone's tears turned to shaky laughter. Duke licked Lucas's face, letting out a soft whimper that sounded like a mixture of joy and relief. Emily and Benjamin hugged them both, hands buried in Duke's fur, hearts overwhelmed with a gratitude they could hardly express. Noah felt tears prick his eyes. He recorded a little, but then put the camera down, deciding the moment was too personal, too intimate to intrude upon. The reunion was everything one could hope for, an outpouring of love strong enough to melt 4 years of separation. Soon, it was time for the Carters to drive Duke to their new home in Denver. Noah offered to come along for part of the journey, at least to the next town, but the family assured him that Duke would be safe. They were immensely thankful for Noah's help. Emily hugged him tight, and Benjamin shook his hand, looking him right in the eyes as if to say, "We owe you for life." Lucas was too emotional to speak more than a choked thank you. But Noah got the message clearly. As they all settled into the Carter family's car, Duke hesitated for a moment, uncertain about stepping inside. The last time he had been in a car, things had gone terribly wrong. Lucas gave Duke a gentle pat, speaking calmly. "It's okay, buddy. We're here. We won't let anything bad happen." Slowly, Duke climbed onto the back seat, pressing close to Lucas. It was tight, but the boy didn't complain. He rested a hand on Duke's neck, feeling the steady rhythm of the dog's breathing. Emily and Benjamin looked over their shoulders, relief and awe spilling from their eyes. It felt like a dream, but the warm feel of Duke's fur was proof enough that it was real. During the long drive back, Duke occasionally whimpered, but Lucas reassured him. They made frequent stops so Duke could stretch his legs and not feel trapped in the vehicle for too long. At a rest stop, other travelers stared in surprise at the dog, who seemed both anxious and thrilled to be with his family again. Emily, glancing at Duke, thought about the heartbreak they had all suffered and how wonderful it was to finally be healing. When the car rolled into the driveway of the Carter family's new home in Denver, the dawn was turning into a clear morning. The house was different from the one Duke had known, and everything around it, streets, other houses, yards, was unfamiliar. Lucas opened the back door, letting Duke step out onto the concrete. The dog hesitated, sniffing the air. Gone were the silent highways and the lonely gas station. Instead, he was greeted by trimmed lawns, parked cars, and neighbors watering flowers. Emily led the way inside. The living room was cozy, with warm-colored walls and soft carpets. The Carter family had prepared a comfortable dog bed in a corner, along with bowls of fresh water and kibble. Duke cautiously padded through the rooms, sniffing furniture and corners. Every so often, he turned back to see if Lucas was following. Lucas trailed him closely, speaking in a gentle tone. "See, buddy, this is our place now. You're safe here." But being safe didn't immediately erase 4 years of waiting and worry. Duke was jumpy. Whenever someone opened a door or a cabinet slammed, he would jerk his head up, tail stiff. Loud sounds like blenders or vacuum cleaners made him uneasy. The Carters understood this was part of Duke's healing process. Emily tried to keep the house calm, with fewer startling noises, so Duke could gradually learn to relax. At bedtime, Duke refused to settle in his plush dog bed. Instead, he paced near the front door, occasionally letting out soft whines. Lucas brought over a pillow and blanket, placing them on the floor beside Duke, and curled up there himself. He gently scratched behind Duke's ears and said, "I'll stay right here with you, so you know you're not alone." They spent the night dozing off and on. Whenever Duke's eyes opened and he realized Lucas was still there, he looked relieved. In the weeks that followed, the family learned that while Duke was thrilled to be with them, he was also deeply affected by his time on his own. Sometimes, he would gaze out a window for long stretches, ears drooping, as if he expected to see that lonely highway. Other times, when they took him into the backyard, he would just stand in the middle of the grass, scanning every direction, uncertain if this was truly home, or if he should keep moving on. Lucas felt those pangs of sorrow and confusion, too. He remembered Duke's puppy days in their old house in Wyoming, how Duke would wag his tail so wildly when Lucas got home from school, or how they'd wrestle on the living room rug until Emily scolded them for making a mess. He remembered how, before bedtime, Duke would curl up at the foot of his bed, snoring softly. Those memories were warm and comforting, but they also reminded him of how much had changed. One day, Lucas decided to dig out the old photo albums they had packed away. He hadn't looked at them in a long time because it hurt too much, but now maybe it would help him connect Duke's past with the present. He found pictures of Duke learning to sit on command, little Lucas feeding him treats, and family trips to a lake where Duke splashed around without fear. Each snapshot told a piece of their story. Lucas called Duke over, patting the floor. The dog approached with a tilt of his head. Lucas sat cross-legged, flipping through the pages. Of course, Duke couldn't recognize the images in the same way, but maybe the smells of the dusty album and the boy's emotional reaction would help. Lucas pointed to a photo of him hugging Duke as a puppy. "That's us," he whispered. Duke leaned forward, sniffing the page. A moment passed, and Duke licked Lucas's hand, almost like saying he understood something of that moment. With each passing day, Duke's tail wagged a bit more often. He started exploring the house, without as much wariness. He even learned the sound of the blender meant Emily was making smoothies. Not that something bad was happening. Benjamin showed him the backyard shed and let him sniff tools and boxes, so he wouldn't be spooked if someone opened it later. Little by little, the dog's shoulders relaxed, and his eyes lost some of that guarded tension. Mealtimes became more joyful. Duke would trot to his bowl, tail swishing, happy to eat real dog food on a regular schedule instead of scraps found on the roadside or the occasional handout from strangers. The Carter family took him to a local veterinarian, who gave Duke a thorough checkup. Amazingly, apart from being underweight and a bit malnourished, Duke was in decent shape. The vet was stunned to learn Duke had survived so long outdoors, but nodded when hearing how people in the small town had been feeding him. Dogs can be incredibly resilient, especially when they have a strong will, she said, and it seems Duke's will was to wait for his family. Hearing that made Lucas tear up again. The love Duke had for them was deeper than anything he'd seen. The vet recommended some gentle exercise and a slow introduction to normal routines. She also mentioned that Duke might still be anxious in new environments, especially after fireworks or thunder. Loud noises could trigger memories of the crash or lonely nights spent trembling in storms. The Carters followed her advice faithfully. They bought interactive puzzle toys to keep Duke's mind engaged, took him on short walks around the neighborhood, and praised him every time he showed curiosity without fear. Neighbors soon learned about Duke's story and often waved or said, "Hello, Duke," as they passed by. It was a far cry from the isolation he'd known. One afternoon, when the sky was clear and everything seemed peaceful, Lucas decided to let Duke roam the fenced backyard without a leash. Up until then, they had kept him on a long lead whenever he went outside, just to make sure he felt safe and didn't run off if startled. But Duke had grown calmer and more trusting, so Lucas thought it was time to give him a little more freedom. Duke trotted through the yard, sniffing the grass, investigating the bushes, and peeking through the fence slats. Lucas watched from the porch, a proud smile on his face. He could see how Duke's body language had changed, less tense, more relaxed. It felt like real progress. Suddenly, a series of loud bangs echoed from a few houses away. Firecrackers. Some neighbor was testing them out, maybe for a holiday or just for fun. But the noise was sharp and explosive, cutting through the stillness. Duke's entire body stiffened, his ears pinned back, and his eyes grew wide with panic. Lucas stood up quickly. "Duke, it's okay," he called out in a soothing voice. But fear had seized Duke's mind. He bolted toward the gate, which, unfortunately, had been left ajar. Lucas sprinted, heart hammering, but Duke slipped through and began running down the sidewalk. "Duke, wait!" Lucas yelled, voice cracking. He dashed after the dog, ignoring the stitch in his side from running so fast. Duke stopped at the end of the block, looking back for the briefest moment. Their eyes met. Lucas's desperate gaze locked with Duke's fearful stare. Memories of the lonely gas station and all the nights Duke spent on edge must have flared up. For a second, Lucas was sure Duke would keep running. He pushed his legs harder, calling the dog's name like a frantic chant. Then, a small miracle happened. Duke did not keep fleeing. Instead, he turned around, head low, tail tucked, and ran back toward Lucas. He let out a series of high-pitched whimpers that sounded like he was apologizing for losing his cool. Lucas dropped to his knees, tears brimming, and Duke pressed against him, trembling all over. They stayed like that, panting and shaking, until Lucas finally found the strength to breathe again. After that scare, the Carters became more careful. They made sure the gate was always latched and that Duke felt safe during any potential loud noises, like storms or fireworks. They bought him a soft thunder shirt, which applies gentle pressure that can calm nervous dogs, and they started turning on soothing music whenever they knew noises might happen nearby. Lucas also spent more time training with Duke in the yard, using positive reinforcement. He'd hold out treats, wave them gently, and say, "Duke, come," in a confident voice. Each time Duke obeyed, he got praise and a tasty snack. Over days and weeks, Duke's trust solidified. He realized that even if loud sounds happened, he had a safe place to run back to, Lucas's side. Emily and Benjamin continued giving Duke lots of patience. They would sit on the couch, inviting Duke to come up and rest his head on their laps, stroking his fur and telling him, "You're such a good boy." At first, Duke stayed on the floor, uncertain if it was truly allowed. But eventually, he found the courage to hop up, nestling in their warmth, letting out soft sighs of contentment. It made the Carters smile whenever they felt Duke's body relax fully. It was like he was saying, "I believe I'm really home now." Martha, the diner owner from a small town, kept in touch. She called every week or so to ask how Duke was doing. "I spent so long bringing that sweet fella scraps of bacon," she'd say with a chuckle. "I'm glad he's got a proper place to sleep now." The Carters reassured her that Duke was indeed doing better every day, thanks to her kindness and the kindness of others in the town. Martha admitted she missed seeing Duke on her daily drives, but she was overjoyed he was back with his people. Lucas, who used to keep his emotions bottled up, found himself sharing his thoughts more openly. He told his parents about the nightmares he had for months after the crash, the guilt he felt for not being able to protect Duke, and the way he had tried to cope by pretending he was okay. Emily and Benjamin listened, hugging him, telling him that none of it was his fault, that sometimes life throws terrible events at people and animals alike, but hope can survive through the darkest times. Meanwhile, Duke showed glimpses of his old, playful self. One morning, Lucas woke up to find Duke wagging his tail at the foot of his bed, just like in the old days. That simple gesture brought a lump to Lucas's throat. He slid out of bed and gave Duke a giant hug, tears threatening to spill. Duke licked Lucas's cheek, and for a moment, it felt as if the 4 lost years were slipping away. The Carters discovered that Duke loved squeaky toys as much as he had when he was younger. They stocked up on different shapes and colors, rubber bones, plush bears, silly squeaking ducks. The first time a squeak went off, Duke jumped, but then realized it wasn't a gunshot or a firecracker. It was something fun. He cautiously bit down again, wagging his tail as it squeaked louder. Before long, he was trotting around the living room, squeaking every few steps, proud of his new treasure. In these small, everyday moments, the Carters recognized how precious second chances were. Every time Duke overcame a new hurdle, like not panicking at the rumble of a passing truck or staying calm during a mild thunderstorm, the family felt their hearts grow lighter. Their dog had suffered so much, and yet his spirit was not broken. If anything, his devotion to them had grown stronger. As Duke continued to settle in, Noah Patterson arranged a trip to see how the family and dog were doing. He felt a deep bond to Duke's story, having been the one to reconnect them. One crisp Saturday morning, Noah knocked on the Carters' front door. Lucas answered, smiling wide when he recognized the journalist who had changed all their lives. "Hey," Noah greeted, carrying a small bag of dog treats. "I just wanted to drop by and see how Duke was adapting." Benjamin invited him inside. Emily offered him coffee. Duke, at first, was cautious around new people, but he eventually sniffed Noah's hand and allowed a gentle pat on his head. Seeing Duke relaxed in a home environment, rather than perched on a cold patch of concrete by an empty station, warmed Noah's heart. They chatted about the rescue, how the video went viral, and how thousands of people had written in, asking about Duke's well-being. Some had even offered to adopt him if no family showed up. Noah explained he had followed up with many of those people, letting them know the reunion was successful and Duke was with his rightful owners again. "I've seen a lot of stories in my career," Noah admitted, "but something about Duke's loyalty blew me away. It's the kind of pure devotion we wish we'd see more in the world." Lucas nodded, looking at Duke, who was snoozing by the couch. "I don't know how we'll ever repay him for what he went through. He never gave up on us." Before Noah left, he took a few updated photos of the family with Duke, smiling, hugging, the dog looking content and loved. He planned to write a follow-up article to let all those who had cheered for Duke know that he was happy and healing. Although Duke was settling in, there was still one giant hurdle for the family: returning to the place where the crash had happened. They had never gone back there after their move. It held too many frightening memories, but Emily felt it might bring some closure. She shared her idea with Benjamin and Lucas, explaining that maybe, If they took Duke there, the dog would realize that chapter was really over, that he didn't have to keep waiting anymore. Lucas was nervous about the idea. Even stepping into a car for a long drive made him remember the accident. Duke, too, seemed uneasy when they opened the car door, but the family resolved to face it together. They chose a bright Sunday with clear skies, less chance of storms or flashbacks of thunder. Duke lay on a blanket in the back seat, with Lucas close, holding his collar gently for reassurance. Emily drove, her hands a bit shaky at first, while Benjamin sat in the passenger seat, offering calm words. The roads had changed over the years, some new construction here, a few new signs there, but the final stretch leading to the crash site remained hauntingly familiar. When they arrived, Emily parked on the shoulder, a safe distance from traffic. Duke perked up, sniffing at the open window. Lucas's heart pounded. He could still see the faint curve in the road where they had swerved. The memories flashed, the blur of headlights, the scream of brakes, the loud impact. Duke must have smelled something that brought his memory back, too, because he whined softly and nuzzled closer to Lucas. They all got out carefully. Benjamin led them to the spot where the paramedics had found them. They stood there in silence, letting their emotions rise and fall. Emily placed a hand on Duke's back. "We're all here now, safe together," she murmured. Lucas felt tears well up, but also felt a strange sense of relief. He knelt down, hugging Duke, who tolerated the long embrace, as if sensing it mattered deeply. After several minutes, they returned to the car. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. They drove away with the knowledge that they had faced that painful memory head-on. Duke no longer needed to stay near that place. He was free to let it go. As months turned into a full year since Duke's rescue, the Carters celebrated the anniversary of the day they brought Duke home. They threw a little gathering in their backyard, inviting neighbors who had heard about Duke's story. Noah was there, too, snapping pictures of a happy dog running around, tail wagging. Martha made the long drive from a small town, bringing a cooler of homemade treats. "Couldn't miss this for the world," she said, beaming at Duke, who barked in delight at her familiar smell. Lucas set up games for the other kids, but he spent most of his time with Duke, tossing a rubber ball for him to chase. Each time Duke grabbed the ball, his mouth parted in what looked like a doggy grin. The Carter parents grilled hamburgers and hot dogs, making sure Duke had a special dish of safe, dog-friendly food. Festive music played softly. The atmosphere glowed with the feeling of gratitude and renewal. During a quiet moment, Noah pulled Lucas aside. "How does it feel?" he asked gently, nodding toward Duke. Lucas thought for a second. "It feels like a miracle," he said, biting his lip. "And it reminds me that even when things look hopeless, you never know what can happen if you don't give up." Noah smiled, patting Lucas on the shoulder. "You're a wise kid. And you're right. I'm proud of you and Duke. You both held on to hope in your own way." Duke's story started out as a local legend, but after Noah's video and the reunion, major news outlets picked it up. The family received invitations for interviews, and talk shows wanted them to appear as special guests. The Carters, not used to the spotlight, politely turned down most requests. They did agree to do one major news segment, where they emphasized the importance of not giving up on lost pets and the power of kindness from strangers. In that segment, they highlighted how Martha and the townspeople had fed Duke and looked out for him, how Noah had taken the time to investigate and post a video, and how thousands of social media users had shared the story. The host said it was a shining example of community and the enduring love between people and their pets. Lucas felt a little shy on camera, but when asked about Duke, he spoke clearly. "He's part of our family. He never gave up on us, and we didn't give up on him. Sometimes it just took us a while to catch up." The audience applauded, some wiping tears from their eyes. After everything Duke had been through, the Carters found themselves more mindful of animal welfare. They started volunteering at local shelters, helping with adoption drives, and encouraging friends to adopt, not shop. They discovered that many dogs, some lost, some surrendered, were waiting for families of their own. A simple act of sharing a social media post or checking a shelter's lost and found list could bring about a reunion similar to Duke's. Emily and Benjamin donated money in Duke's name to a few animal rescue organizations. Lucas even organized a small fundraiser at his school, telling classmates about Duke's journey. The proceeds went to a group that specialized in finding lost dogs using social media. "It's amazing what one post can do," Lucas said, referencing how Noah's video reached them. "We can all help reunite pets with their families." Duke, of course, had no idea about these charitable efforts in his honor. He was just happy to finally be at ease. He enjoyed long walks in the neighborhood, meeting other friendly dogs, basking in the sunshine on the back porch, and curling up with Lucas on the couch to watch movies. The nightmares that once haunted him seemed to fade. If thunder boomed or fireworks exploded, he would still tremble a bit. But the Carters were ready with calming words, treats, and gentle touches. On quiet evenings, Lucas sometimes liked to lie on his bed, Duke nestled close, and think about the past. He would recall how bleak and empty their lives felt when they believed Duke was gone forever. He would recall the day they saw that video, the drive to the gas station, and the rush of relief when Duke ran into their arms. It all felt like a story from a book, one with a happy ending. He also thought about the townspeople who had cared for Duke. They didn't know who Duke belonged to, yet they fed him, offered him water, and did their best to keep him safe. That sense of community warmed Lucas's heart. He realized that people could be incredibly kind, even to a dog they'd never met before. It made him want to pay it forward whenever he could. One afternoon, Lucas wrote a long thank you note to Martha and the others who had helped. He talked about how Duke was healthy now, how he loved chasing squeaky toys, and how he slept next to Lucas's bed every night. He included pictures and even got Duke to put a paw print on one piece of paper with some non-toxic ink. Then he mailed everything with a heartfelt message. "You helped Duke keep believing in love. Thank you." As the next winter approached, the Carters noticed how much more confident Duke had become. The first sign of snow used to make him uneasy, perhaps bringing back memories of freezing nights without shelter. But this time, Duke wagged his tail when flakes drifted down. He trotted around the yard, leaving paw prints, occasionally sticking out his tongue to catch a snowflake. Lucas would bundle up in boots and a jacket, stepping outside to toss tennis balls into the fresh powder. Duke bounded after them, sometimes getting lost in drifts, but always emerging with a playful bark. The two would wrestle in the snow until their cheeks and noses turned red from the cold. Then they'd clomp back inside, wet and shivering, but laughing. Emily had hot chocolate ready, and Duke got a warm towel rub down. Benjamin installed a new dog door, so Duke could come and go into the fenced backyard without them constantly opening the door. At first, Duke was hesitant, but with a few treats and a gentle push, he learned to pass through the flap confidently. Soon, he was popping in and out, investigating the yard, checking if any squirrels dared to approach. It was another small triumph, one more sign that Duke felt safe and claimed this place as his home. Word spread in Denver about Duke's journey, and one day, the local Humane Society reached out to the Carters. They wanted to honor Duke at a charity gala, celebrating him as a symbol of hope and resilience. Emily felt a bit embarrassed by the attention, but she decided it might shine a light on animals still searching for families. At the gala, there were booths from different animal rescue organizations, silent auctions, and speeches from people who had adopted pets. The highlight of the evening came when a short video about Duke's story played on a big screen. Lucas stood next to Duke, gently stroking the dog's back, as pictures of the lonely gas station and the joyous reunion filled the stage. Many in the audience teared up or smiled widely. Then the head of the Humane Society presented Lucas with a plaque that read, "To Duke, the dog who never stopped waiting, and to the Carter family, for showing us that love never truly disappears." Lucas accepted it with a quivering smile, glancing at Duke, who tilted his head as if to say, "Is there a treat involved in all of this?" They left that night feeling humbled and inspired. On the drive home, Emily said softly, "We're so lucky to have him back. I hope every lost pet finds a chance like Duke did." Duke listened from the back seat, ears perked at the warmth in her voice. He was going home to soft blankets and people who adored him, no questions asked. Over the following months, everyday life became a peaceful routine. Duke greeted Lucas each morning by gently laying his head on the bed to wake him up. Lucas, half asleep, would scratch Duke's ears. Then they'd head downstairs for breakfast. Duke munched on his kibble, sometimes dropping a piece on the floor and chasing it around like a toy. After school, Lucas would do his homework at the kitchen table. Duke curled up on a nearby rug, occasionally lifting his head to watch Lucas scribble away. If Lucas sighed in frustration over a math problem, Duke would stare at him with kind eyes that seemed to say, "You can do it." The presence of a loyal friend often made the stress easier to handle. On weekends, the Carters enjoyed taking Duke to dog-friendly hiking trails. They'd drive out to the mountains, and Duke would hang his head out the window, ears flapping, eyes drinking in the scenery. Once they arrived, he bounded along the paths, tail wagging so hard it nearly knocked over branches. Lucas loved snapping pictures of Duke at scenic overlooks. Emily joked that they should start an online account just for Duke's adventures. Even chores like washing Duke became a fun event. Lucas and Emily would fill a tub in the backyard on warm days, using gentle dog shampoo. Duke would tolerate it, standing patiently while they scrubbed the dust and grime out of his fur. Then he'd shake vigorously, drenching everyone in soapy water. They'd all squeal and mock outrage, but it always ended with laughter and a round of towels. Noah Patterson swung by for another visit during the summer, about a year and a half after Duke's reunion. This time, he had a bigger plan. He wanted to film a comprehensive follow-up about Duke's progress for a documentary on loyal pets. He arrived with a small production crew, which worried the Carters at first. They didn't want to stress Duke, but they trusted Noah, and he promised to keep things calm and respectful. They filmed interviews with each family member. Emily explained the early challenges of convincing Duke to sleep indoors, how it took time for him to feel safe. Benjamin spoke about how the accident made them rethink their priorities, focusing more on what truly mattered, like family and the bonds we share with animals. Lucas, now taller and more confident, described how Duke's loyalty had taught him to never lose hope, even when things seem impossible. Duke, for his part, was surprisingly cooperative. He let the camera crew film him exploring the backyard, lounging in the living room, and playing fetch with Lucas. Sometimes he'd wander off camera to investigate a sound or a smell, but that was fine. They wanted natural footage. One moment in particular got everyone choked up. As Lucas told the camera about the first time Duke recognized him after 4 years, Duke quietly approached and rested his chin on Lucas's leg, as if offering silent support. Noah knew that scene would be a powerful highlight of the documentary. After the shoot, the crew had a small barbecue in the Carters' yard. They toasted to Duke's amazing resilience, and Duke happily soaked up the attention, nudging people for extra pets and maybe a scrap of meat if they weren't looking. The documentary, once finished, aired on a popular streaming service. It was titled Waiting for Home, The Duke Story. It reached countless viewers around the country and even beyond. People wrote heartfelt messages, saying how the story reminded them of the importance of loyalty and the strong connection between animals and humans. Some even said it helped them decide to adopt a pet who needed a second chance. Lucas sometimes read these comments to Duke as they lounged in his bedroom. "You're an inspiration," Lucas teased, laughing gently as Duke wagged his tail. The dog probably didn't grasp the meaning of the words, but he understood Lucas's kind voice. The Carters kept living their normal life, but they never forgot the lessons they had learned. Kindness matters, whether it's from a diner owner leaving out food or from a stranger sharing a social media post. Loyalty can triumph over the worst circumstances, as proven by a dog who refused to leave a gas station for years. Hope might seem small at times, but it can lead to miracles if you hold onto it long enough. Duke's presence was a daily reminder of these truths. Whenever Emily felt worried about the future, she only had to look at Duke's peaceful nap by the window to know everything could still turn out okay. As time went on, the Carters considered giving Duke a friend. They decided to adopt another dog from a local shelter, not to replace Duke's memories, but to add a new chapter to their lives. They found a gentle mixed-breed puppy who had been abandoned and needed a loving family. Lucas named her Daisy. At first, Duke was a bit puzzled by this tiny ball of energy. Daisy would bounce around him, sniffing his ears, trying to get him to play. Duke would watch her with a calm expression, occasionally lifting a paw to nudge her away. But Daisy was persistent, and soon the two were romping around the living room, chasing squeaky toys and tumbling over each other. The Carters saw how having a second dog brought more happiness into the household. Duke seemed to enjoy teaching Daisy the ropes, where to go for water, how to ask for treats, where to sleep. Daisy seemed to give Duke even more reason to be active and playful, as if reminding him that life was full of new beginnings. Every so often, Lucas would realize that Duke was getting older. His muzzle had a few more gray hairs. His limbs might be slightly stiffer after a long run, but Duke still had that spark in his eyes, that same unwavering spirit that kept him at that gas station for so long. Lucas thought of how many dogs never find their way back home after getting lost. He felt an extra layer of gratitude that the stars aligned for Duke. It took many caring people, from Martha to Noah, from the townsfolk who provided shelter to the countless online supporters, to make it happen. Now, Duke's life was full of cozy beds, belly rubs, healthy meals, and dog companions like Daisy. He had truly moved on from those lonely days, even though a piece of him might always remember that stretch of road where he once stood guard. One winter, the Carters drove through the old town where Duke had waited. They planned to visit Martha's diner and surprise her. They brought Duke along, wanting him to see Martha one more time. When they parked outside the diner, Duke perked up as if he recognized the scent. He hopped out, tail wagging at the sight of a familiar building. Martha nearly dropped a tray of cups when she saw them enter. "Duke," she exclaimed. Her face lit up with pure joy. The German shepherd padded forward, ears erect, tail softly moving side to side. Martha knelt, hugging him gently around the neck. "You look so good," she said, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes. "Much happier than the last time I saw you." They enjoyed a warm meal, chatting about the changes in the town, how the gas station was being renovated by a new owner who wanted to turn it into a small convenience store. Martha joked, "At least no other dog will be waiting there alone again." The family smiled, grateful for how far Duke had come. Later, they drove by the old station. Construction crews were busy, so they didn't stay long. But Emily caught the faint outline of where Duke used to sit. It brought back a flood of memories, heartache, longing, and now healing. She leaned toward Duke, giving him a soft scratch behind the ear. "Never again," she whispered. "You'll never have to be alone like that again." Back at their home in Denver, life flowed peacefully. Duke napped in sunny spots, played with Daisy, and greeted Lucas at the door each afternoon. They weren't always thinking about the past anymore, but it never completely faded. Sometimes, especially on quiet nights, the memory of that heartbreaking wait resurfaced. But now it was paired with the knowledge that Duke's hope had been rewarded. Duke's journey reminds us all that love can outlast grief, that loyalty can overcome distance, and that hope can conquer fear. Not every lost pet gets a miracle, but Duke's story stands as proof that miracles do happen when caring people step in. His story also reminds us to never lose faith in the strong bond between humans and animals. If you ever see a lonely dog sitting by the road, remember Duke. Maybe that dog is waiting for someone who still loves them dearly. So in honor of Duke, let's continue to share stories of hope, adopt from shelters, and treat our pets with the kindness they deserve. Let's keep believing in second chances and the power of simple goodness. Because one day, you might just find yourself part of a miracle like Duke's, a loyal dog who never forgot his family and finally got to go home, proving that some bonds can never be broken, no matter how long the wait.